The winter of 1873 arrived in New Mexico territory like an uninvited ghost, silent, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. Agatha Lee stood at the kitchen window of the Lee Ranch, watching fat snowflakes drift down from a gray sky, settling on the red earth like sugar on cinnamon. In her 22 years, she had never seen snow fall so heavily in this desert land. The sight should have been beautiful. Instead, it filled her with unease. "Agatha, stop daydreaming and help me with these preserves," her mother called from behind her, voice sharp with the perpetual worry that had lined her face since Agatha's older brother died of fever 3 years ago. "Yes, Mama." Agatha turned from the window, but her mind remained outside where her father and the new hired hand were working to secure the barn against the storm. The hired hand, Arcan. Even thinking his name made something flutter uncomfortably in her chest, a sensation she'd been taught to recognize as fear, though it felt nothing like the fear she experienced when rattlesnakes appeared near the well or when dust storms darkened the horizon. Her father had hired him 2 weeks ago, despite her mother's protests, despite the warnings from their nearest neighbors, the Hutchinsons, who lived 5 miles east. "A savage," Mrs. Hutchinson had hissed during their last visit to town. "Those people can't be trusted. They'll slit your throat as soon as look at you." But winter was coming, her father had said, and they needed help. Their regular hands had moved on to larger ranches with better pay. The cattle needed tending, the fences needed mending, and at 56 Thomas Lee couldn't manage it all alone. When Arcan had appeared at their gate, offering work for food and shelter through the winter, her father had seen providence. Her mother had seen doom. Agatha hadn't known what she'd seen. She still didn't. She moved mechanically through her chores, helping her mother seal jars of peach preserves they'd made from their small orchard's final harvest. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Through the window, she caught glimpses of movement, her father's gray coat, and beside him, a taller figure in buckskin and dark wool, moving with an economy of motion that seemed almost fluid. "Stop looking at him," her mother said quietly, not turning from the stove where she was boiling more jars. Heat flooded Agatha's cheeks. "I wasn't—" "Yes, you were. You've been watching him since he arrived. It's not proper, Agatha, and it's not safe. Mama, he's just working. I know what you're doing." Her mother turned then, and the expression on her face was complex. Part fear, part sadness, part something else Agatha couldn't name. "I was young once too. I know how a handsome face can make a girl forget sense. But this isn't about romance or rebellion, Agatha. This is about survival, our survival. We're isolated out here. If something happened, Papa trusts him. Your Papa trusts everyone until he's proven wrong. I trust no one until they've proven right." Her mother returned to the stove, her shoulders rigid beneath her faded calico dress. "Just stay away from him. That's all I ask." But staying away proved impossible. That evening, when the snow had deepened to 6 inches, a miracle and a curse in this parched land, a problem arose with the cattle. One of their pregnant cows had wandered into a gully and was stuck, bellowing in distress. Thomas Lee came into the house with snow dusting his hat and shoulders, his expression grim. "I need rope and lanterns," he said. "That heifer is going to die out there if we don't get her out soon, and we can't afford to lose her or the calf." "I'll help," Agatha said immediately, already reaching for her heavy coat. "Absolutely not," her mother interjected. "It's dark. It's freezing. Mama, we need everyone. You know we do." Agatha tied her bonnet firmly under her chin, avoiding her mother's eyes. The truth was she wanted to help, but she also wanted out of this suffocating house, away from her mother's fearful gaze and endless warnings. Her father looked between them, then nodded. "Bundle up well. It's bitter out there." The cold hit Agatha like a physical blow when she stepped outside. The wind carried the snow horizontally now, stinging her cheeks and making her eyes water. She followed her father toward the gully, carrying a lantern that swung wild shadows across the white, dusted earth. Arcan was already there, standing at the edge of the gully, looking down at the struggling cow. When he heard them approach, he turned, and Agatha's breath caught. Not from the cold this time, but from the way the lantern light caught his face. High cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so dark they seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. His long black hair was loose, blowing in the wind, and snowflakes clung to the strands like small stars. "She's wedged between two rocks," he said, his voice low and calm. His English was perfect, she noticed, with only the barest hint of an accent she couldn't place. "If we're not careful, she'll break her leg trying to get free." "Can you get down there?" Thomas asked, practical as always. Arcan nodded. "I'll need rope, and someone to help pull once I've secured her." "I'll help," Agatha said before she could think better of it. For the first time, Arcan looked directly at her. His gaze was intense, penetrating, as if he could see through her layers of wool and fear to something underneath she didn't know existed. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth, knowing, almost amused. "You're strong enough?" he asked, and there was no mockery in the question, only genuine inquiry. "I've worked this ranch my whole life," she replied, lifting her chin. "I'm stronger than I look." That smile deepened, just a fraction. "I believe you." Something warm bloomed in her chest, completely at odds with the freezing air. The rescue took an hour. Arcan climbed down into the gully with a rope tied around his waist, moving with a grace that seemed impossible on the icy rocks. Agatha watched, holding her breath, as he calmed the panicked cow with gentle words in a language she didn't understand, Apache, she assumed, and slowly worked her free from the rocks that trapped her. When the moment came to pull, Agatha and her father hauled on the rope while Arcan guided the cow from below. The animal's weight was tremendous, and Agatha's arms burned with effort, her boots sliding in the snow. She felt herself losing purchase, felt the rope begin to slip, and then Arcan was there, having somehow climbed out of the gully with impossible speed. His hands closed over hers on the rope, large and warm, even through her gloves, steadying her. Together they pulled, and the cow lurched up and out of the gully with a final bellow of distress. For a moment Agatha was intensely aware of Arcan's presence behind her, the heat of his body cutting through the cold, the sound of his breathing, steady and controlled, the strength in his hands still covering hers. "Good work," her father said, coiling the rope. He didn't seem to notice, or chose not to notice, how close Arcan stood to his daughter. Arcan stepped back, and the cold rushed in where his warmth had been. "The cow should be fine," he said, "but she'll need watching tonight. The shock might bring on early labor." "I'll take first watch," Thomas said. "Arcan, you take second. Agatha, get inside before your mother worries herself sick." Agatha wanted to protest, wanted to volunteer for watch duty, but her father's tone left no room for argument. She trudged back toward the house, acutely aware that Arcan was walking a few paces behind her. The snow muffled their footsteps, creating a bubble of silence around them. "You handled that well," he said quietly. Not many ranch owners' daughters would get their hands dirty like that. She shouldn't engage in conversation. Her mother's warnings echoed in her head, but her mouth moved anyway. "You don't know many ranch owners' daughters, then?" She heard the smile in his voice. "That's true. Most won't come near me." Something in his tone, resigned, almost sad, made her stop and turn. He nearly ran into her, stopping just inches away. This close, she could see snowflakes caught in his eyelashes, could see the intelligence in those dark eyes, could feel the magnetism her mother had warned her about. "Why did you come here?" she asked. "To our ranch, I mean. There are other places, larger operations, better pay." He studied her for a long moment. "I had my reasons." "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." The wind gusted and Agatha shivered despite her heavy coat. Arcan's eyes tracked the movement, and something shifted in his expression. Concern, maybe, or something else. "You should get inside," he said softly, "before you freeze." "You should, too." "I'm used to the cold." He reached out, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought he might touch her face, brush away the snow clinging to her bonnet. But his hand dropped. "Go on, Agatha. Your mother's watching from the window." He knew her name, of course he did. Her father would have mentioned it, but hearing it in his voice, low and careful, made it sound like something precious. She turned and walked to the house, feeling his gaze on her back with every step. Her mother met her at the door with a blanket and hot coffee, her expression stormy. "What were you doing out there, talking to him?" "We rescued a cow, Mama. We were just—" I saw how close he stood. "How long you lingered?" Her mother's hands shook as she wrapped the blanket around Agatha's shoulders. "Please, please, Agatha, don't do this." "I wasn't doing anything," Agatha protested, but the words felt hollow. She had been doing something. She had been feeling something. and from the fear in her mother's eyes it showed. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Agatha listened to the wind howl around the house and thought about warm hands on cold rope, about dark eyes that saw too much, about a smile that felt like a secret shared between them. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself she would keep her distance. She told herself many things that winter night as the snow continued to fall and transform the desert into something strange and beautiful. But deep down, in a place she was afraid to examine too closely, she knew the truth. Something had begun out there in the cold and dark, something that felt inevitable, like the spring that would eventually melt this impossible snow. And no amount of fear or propriety or warning could stop what was already in motion. The snow lasted 3 days, blanketing the ranch in an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through the bare cottonwoods. Agatha spent those days in a state of heightened awareness, constantly torn between avoiding Arcan and engineering reasons to catch glimpses of him. From the kitchen window, she watched him work. He moved with an efficiency that spoke of deep knowledge, not just of ranch work, but of the land itself. When he mended fences, his hands worked the wire with a sureness that never fumbled. When he tended the horses, they quieted under his touch, even the fractious mare that usually bit anyone who came near. He seemed to understand the animals in a way that went beyond training, as if he spoke their language. And he was beautiful. The realization came to her gradually, shamefully. She'd been taught that such thoughts were improper, especially about a man of his background, but there was no denying the truth of it. The way his body moved under his clothes, economical, powerful. The line of his jaw, the rare moments when he smiled at something, usually at one of the ranch dogs or a particularly stubborn calf, and his whole face transformed into something luminous. "You're staring again," her mother said one morning, making Agatha jump and spill flour across the table. "Don't lie to me, Agatha, I have eyes." Her mother's voice was weary rather than angry. "What do you think will come of this, even if he were appropriate? What future do you imagine?" Agatha swept the flour into her palm, not meeting her mother's gaze. "I'm not imagining anything." "Then why can't you look at me?" "Because you'll see the truth," Agatha thought but didn't say. "Because I don't understand what's happening to me, and I'm afraid if I speak it aloud it will become real." Her father, at least, seemed oblivious to the tension in the house. He was pleased with Arcan's work, constantly commenting on how much they'd accomplished, how prepared they were for the winter. "Best decision I made all year," he said over supper one evening. "That man knows his way around a ranch." Agatha's mother said nothing, but her lips thinned into a hard line. On the 4th day, the sun emerged, turning the snow to blinding brilliance. Agatha volunteered to help break ice from the water troughs, anything to escape the suffocating atmosphere inside. She wrapped herself in layers and stepped into a world transformed. The desert she knew had vanished, replaced by rolling white drifts that sparkled like crushed diamonds under the intense blue sky. She found Arcan at the north pasture trough, wielding an axe to break through ice that had formed overnight. His breath plumed in the cold air, and he'd removed his coat despite the temperature, working in his shirt and vest. As she approached, he looked up, and that small, knowing smile appeared. "Come to supervise," he asked. "Come to help," she replied, reaching for the second axe propped against the trough. "Your mother know you're out here?" "My father sent me." "Interesting." He returned to his work, muscles flexing as he brought the axe down. The ice shattered with a satisfying crack. "You're a dutiful daughter, then." Something in his tone pricked at her. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just an observation." He moved to another section of ice. "You do what you're told. Stay where you're supposed to stay. Don't ask difficult questions." Anger flared in her chest. Anger and something else, something that felt like shame. "You don't know anything about me." "Don't I?" He paused, leaning on the axe handle, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "I've been watching you, Agatha Lee, just as you've been watching me." Her heart hammered. "I haven't—" "You watch from the kitchen window, from your bedroom window, from behind the barn door when you think I don't notice." He stepped closer and she found herself frozen in place. "Did you think I couldn't feel your eyes on me? Did you think I didn't see you duck away every time I turned around?" Heat flooded her face despite the cold. "That's presumptuous." "Is it?" closer still until she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, could smell the scent of him, wood smoke and leather, and something wild she couldn't name. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you haven't been curious. Tell me you don't wonder what it would be like if what? The words burst out of her before she could stop them. If my parents didn't fear you, if the neighbors wouldn't call me a traitor, if we lived in a world where this— She gestured between them. Whatever this is could be something other than impossible. His expression softened. Is that what you think? That it's impossible? Isn't it? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, when she stood rooted to the ground, her breath coming fast, his fingers brushed her cheek, so gentle it was barely a touch. Some things, he said quietly, are only impossible if we believe they are. The contact lasted only seconds before he dropped his hand and stepped back, but Agatha's cheek burned where he'd touched her, as if he'd branded her with something invisible. I should go, she whispered. Yes, he agreed. You probably should. But neither of them moved. They stood in the crystalline silence, breath mingling in the cold air, and Agatha felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crack, a door beginning to open. Why did you come here? She asked again. The question that had haunted her since his arrival. Really? Why our ranch? Why now? He looked away, toward the mountains in the distance, white-capped and severe. Because I'd heard about you. About a woman with golden hair and a curious spirit, trapped in a cage of fear and propriety. I wanted to see if the stories were true. Stories? From whom? Does it matter? Yes. He turned back to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her knees weak. I came because I wanted to know if someone like you could see past what I am, if you could see who I am. And? Her voice was barely audible. Can I? I don't know yet. He picked up his axe, the moment breaking. But I'm willing to wait and find out. Agatha fled then, her mind reeling. She returned to the house to find her mother waiting, arms crossed, expression thunderous. What happened out there? Nothing. We broke ice from the trough. Don't lie to me, Agatha. Your face is flushed, your hands are shaking. I'm cold, Mama, that's all. But they both knew it was a lie. Agatha was burning from the inside out, consumed by something she couldn't name and didn't know how to fight. The next week passed in a strange dance. Agatha tried to maintain distance, tried to focus on her chores and her responsibilities. But Arcan seemed to be everywhere. In the barn when she went to collect eggs, at the well when she drew water, mending the fence line that ran past the kitchen garden, and always he was watching her with those dark eyes that seemed to strip away all her carefully constructed defenses. Her mother grew more agitated by the day, snapping at minor infractions, jumping at shadows. We need to send him away, she told Thomas one night, not knowing Agatha was listening from the hallway. Before something happens, we can't take back. He's the best hand we've had in years, Catherine, and winter's not over. We need him. We need our daughter safe, more than we need a hired hand. Safe from what? He's been nothing but respectful, hard-working. You're seeing threats where none exist. Thomas, please, I'm begging you. But her father's mind was made up. Arcan stayed, and the tension in the house grew thicker, more suffocating, until Agatha felt she might scream from the pressure of it. It came to a head on a clear, cold morning 2 weeks after the snow had fallen. Agatha was in the barn, mucking out stalls, hard, mindless work that usually helped clear her head. She was bent over her shovel when a shadow fell across the doorway. Your mother sent me to town for supplies, Arcan said. I thought you might want to come along. Get out of the house for a while. Agatha straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead despite the cold. My mother would never send me to town with you. I didn't say she sent you, I said she sent me. That knowing smile again. But the wagon has room for 2, and you look like you could use some air. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was exactly what her mother had warned her against. Give me 10 minutes to change, Agatha heard herself say. She was waiting by the wagon when he brought it around, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Her mother appeared in the doorway of the house, her face pale with shock. Agatha, what are you doing? Going to town for supplies, Mama. We'll be back by sundown. Absolutely not. You will— Papa said we needed flour and salt. Arcan can't carry everything himself. It was a flimsy excuse, and they all knew it. But before her mother could formulate a response, Agatha had climbed onto the wagon seat, and Arcan had snapped the reins. The horses moved forward, and the ranch fell behind them. They rode in silence for the first mile. The road was rutted and partially muddy from melting snow, and the wagon bounced and swayed. Agatha gripped the edge of the seat, intensely aware of Arcan beside her. The warmth of his body, the capable way he handled the reins, the occasional brush of his shoulder against hers when the wagon hit a particularly deep rut. "You'll pay for that when you get back," he said finally. "I know." Was it worth it? She looked at him, really looked at him, not in stolen glances, but directly, studying the strong lines of his face, the intelligence in his eyes, the way the winter sun brought out blue-black highlights in his hair. "Ask me when we get back," she said. His laugh was low and warm, and it wrapped around her like a blanket. Fair enough. They talked on that ride. Really talked for the first time. He told her about growing up in the mountains to the north, about learning to track and hunt from his grandfather, about the slow erosion of his people's way of life as more settlers pushed west. He spoke without bitterness, just a quiet sadness that made her chest ache. She told him about growing up isolated on the ranch, about the brother she'd lost to fever, about the way her mother's fear had grown over the years until it consumed everything, about the loneliness of being surrounded by vast land, but feeling trapped in a space no bigger than a box. "I understand that," he said quietly, feeling trapped, feeling like the world sees only what it wants to see, not who you really are. "And who are you?" she asked. "Really?" He guided the horses around a deep rut before answering. "I'm a man trying to find his place between two worlds. Not quite Apache anymore, not quite white, not fully accepted by either. That must be lonely." "It is." He glanced at her and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding. But maybe less so lately. Her breath caught. "Arcan—" "We're almost to town," he interrupted, and she understood that he was giving her an out, a chance to retreat before they crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But she didn't want to retreat anymore. She was tired of fear, tired of propriety, tired of living her life according to everyone else's rules and warnings. "I don't want you to be lonely," she said quietly. His hands tightened on the reins. "Agatha, I know it's impossible. I know all the reasons why, but I—" She faltered, not sure how to put words to the feelings swirling inside her. "I see you. Not what everyone says you are. Not what they're afraid you are. I see you." For a long moment, he didn't respond. They crested a hill, and the town of Socorro spread before them, a collection of adobe buildings and false-fronted shops strung along a single main street. Then he pulled the wagon to the side of the road, just before they would be visible to the townspeople, and turned to face her fully. "If we do this," he said, his voice rough, "there's no going back. You understand that? Once we acknowledge what's between us, once we give it a name and a shape, your life will change. People will talk. Your mother's fears will come true. You'll be marked as different, as other, and I won't be able to protect you from that." "Maybe I don't need protection," she said, surprised by her own boldness. "Maybe I'm stronger than everyone thinks." His hand rose, cupping her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I know you are. I've always known." "Then why?" "Because I need you to know it too. I need you to be sure, Agatha. I need you to choose this, choose me, with your eyes open and your mind clear. Not out of rebellion or curiosity or some romanticized idea of forbidden love, but because you truly see a future with me, no matter how difficult that future might be." Agatha covered his hand with hers, leaning into his touch. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how we'll manage or what people will say, or even if this will work, but I know that for the first time in my life, I feel awake. I feel real, and it's because of you. Agatha, I choose you," she whispered. "I choose this, whatever comes." The kiss, when it came, was inevitable as sunrise. His lips met hers with a gentleness that belied the intensity of the emotions swirling between them. Agatha's world narrowed to the sensation of his mouth on hers, the warmth of his hand cradling her face, the way her heart seemed to beat in time with his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the world had changed. The sky was still blue, the town still waited ahead, The horses still stamped and snorted in their traces. But Agatha was different. She had crossed a threshold, and there was no going back. "Well," Arcan said, his voice rougher than she'd ever heard it, "that complicates things." A laugh bubbled up from her chest, surprising them both. "That's one way to put it." He smiled. A real smile this time, not the small, knowing one she'd grown accustomed to, but something open and unguarded and beautiful. "Come on, let's get your supplies before people start asking questions." They drove into town with a careful distance between them on the wagon seat, but everything had changed. Every accidental brush of shoulders felt electric. Every glance they exchanged held worlds of meaning. And when they returned to the ranch at sundown, supplies loaded in the wagon bed, Agatha knew she was going home to face her mother's wrath, her father's disappointment, and a future more uncertain than ever. But she also knew, with a certainty that transcended fear or logic, that she had made the right choice. Because some loves aren't meant to be denied. Some hearts recognize each other across every barrier erected to keep them apart. And once that recognition occurs, once two souls decide to reach for each other despite the odds, nothing, not fear, not prejudice, not the entire weight of society's expectations, can stop what has been set in motion. The storm that awaited her at home would be fierce. But Agatha Lee had discovered something fiercer still, the courage to choose her own path, to write her own story, to love without permission. And that discovery, she was beginning to understand, might be the most powerful thing of all. The confrontation, when it came, was worse than Agatha had imagined. Her mother was waiting on the porch when they pulled up, arms wrapped around herself against the evening cold, face etched with fury and fear in equal measure. Thomas Lee stood behind her, expression troubled, but not yet angry. He hadn't understood yet what had happened, Agatha realized. He still saw only a daughter returning from an errand. "Inside," Catherine Lee said, the single word sharp as a knife. "Now." Agatha climbed down from the wagon without looking at Arcan, though she could feel his concern radiating toward her like heat. She followed her mother into the house, her father trailing behind, confusion giving way to worry. The kitchen became a battlefield. "How could you?" Her mother's voice shook, tears streaming down her face. "How could you be so reckless, so foolish, riding off with him like some common—" "Catherine," Thomas interrupted, "they went for supplies. Nothing—" "Look at her, Thomas. Look at your daughter's face and tell me nothing happened." And Agatha knew her father saw it then, saw the change in her eyes, the color high in her cheeks, the defiant set of her jaw, saw that his daughter had become, in a single day, someone different than the girl who had left that morning. "Agatha." His voice was heavy with disappointment. "Tell me your mother is wrong. Tell me you haven't done something foolish." She could have lied. Part of her wanted to smooth this over, buy time to figure out how to navigate the impossible situation she'd created. But another part, the part that had been awakened by Arcan's touch, by the feeling of being truly seen for the first time, refused to hide anymore. "I care about him, Papa." The silence that followed was crushing. "No." Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. "No, no, no, this can't be happening." "Catherine, don't you dare tell me to calm down, Thomas. Don't you dare act like this is anything but a disaster." Her mother turned back to Agatha, and the anguish in her face was almost unbearable. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Any idea what this means?" "I know it's complicated." "Complicated?" A hysterical laugh. "It's suicide, Agatha. Social suicide, maybe physical suicide. The Hutchinsons, the Browns, everyone in Socorro, they'll turn on us. And him, the moment people find out, they'll—" She couldn't finish, choking on her own words. "That's enough," Thomas said, firm now. He looked at Agatha, and she saw him struggling between love and duty, between protecting his daughter and protecting his family's standing. "Agatha, go to your room. Your mother and I need to discuss this." "Papa, please, if you'd just listen." "I said go to your room." She went, but she could hear them arguing through the thin walls. Her mother's voice, high and panicked. Her father's, trying for calm but edged with anger. Words floated through. "Send her away. Get rid of him. Before it's too late." Agatha lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if she had the strength for what was coming. Choosing Arcan in a moment of passion was one thing. Living with the consequences was another. A soft tap on her window made her jump. She looked up to find Arcan outside, crouched below the sill, his face barely visible in the darkness. She opened the window a crack. "You shouldn't be here. If they find you, I needed to make sure you were all right." "I'm fine, it's just difficult." He reached through the narrow opening, his hand finding hers. "I'm sorry. I should never have asked you to come with me. I should have known." "Don't." She squeezed his fingers. "Don't apologize for the best day I've had in years. Don't apologize for making me feel alive. Agatha, if they send you away, then I'll find a way back to you." The words surprised her with their certainty. "I don't know how yet. I don't know what we'll do. But I meant what I said. I choose you." He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "You're braver than you know. Or more foolish. Maybe both." A hint of his smile. "The bravest people usually are." "Arcan," she hesitated, then pushed forward. "Tell me something true. Something about you that no one else knows." He studied her in the darkness. "Why?" "Because I need to know this is real. That it's not just attraction or rebellion or whatever my mother thinks it is. I need to know you." He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "When I was 12, my mother died. Cholera. My father, my white father, had already left years before. I watched the women of my mother's tribe prepare her for burial, and I realized I belonged nowhere. Too Apache for the white world, too white for the Apache world. I've spent every day since trying to find a place I fit." "And," she whispered, "have you found it?" He looked at her, and even in the darkness she could see the intensity in his eyes. "I thought I never would. Until I saw you standing in your kitchen window, watching the world outside like a bird in a cage who's forgotten she has wings." Agatha's throat tightened with emotion. "That's how you see me. That's who you are. Who you could be, if you let yourself." The sound of footsteps made them both freeze. Her father's voice called from the hallway. "Agatha, are you all right in there?" "I'm fine, Papa," she called back, trying to keep her voice steady. "Get some sleep. We'll talk more in the morning." Arcan withdrew his hand. "I should go." "Wait." She held onto his fingers for one more moment. "Whatever happens, whatever they decide, don't leave. Not yet. Promise me." "I promise. But Agatha, if staying puts you in danger, promise me." He nodded slowly. "I promise." He disappeared into the darkness, leaving Agatha alone with her racing thoughts and uncertain future. The next morning brought a veneer of normalcy that fooled no one. Her mother moved through the kitchen like a ghost, pale and silent. Her father focused on his breakfast with unusual intensity, not meeting anyone's eyes. Agatha picked at her food, her stomach in knots. Arcan didn't come to the house for breakfast, as was his custom. Agatha spotted him from the window, already working near the south fence line, giving the family space to sort through their crisis. "We've made a decision," Thomas finally said, pushing away his half-eaten meal. "Arcan will finish out the week. Then we'll pay him for his time and send him on his way. It's better this way, Agatha. Cleaner." "Papa, no." "It's already decided." His voice was firm, but she could see the pain in his eyes. "And you'll be staying with your aunt in Santa Fe for a few months. Give things time to settle. Give you time to clear your head." "You're sending me away?" Agatha felt panic rising in her chest. "To Aunt Margaret's?" "It's for the best," her mother said, speaking for the first time that morning. "A change of scenery. Distance. Time to remember who you are and what you owe this family." "I know who I am, and I'm not a child who needs to be sent away to be disciplined." "Then don't act like one," her father said quietly. "If you care about this family, about our safety and our standing, you'll do this without argument." Agatha looked between her parents, her mother's fearful eyes, her father's troubled face, and realized they truly believed they were protecting her. They couldn't see that their protection felt like suffocation, that their safety was a prison. "How long?" she asked quietly. 3 months. Maybe 4. Her father reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I know it seems harsh, Agatha, but your mother is right. This can't continue. It's not safe, and it's not right. You'll understand that better with some distance." But Agatha already understood. She understood that her parents saw Arcan as a threat, not a person, that they saw her feelings as a phase, not real emotion, that they would never see what she saw, feel what she felt. She pulled her hand away. When do I leave? End of the week. I'll drive you to Santa Fe myself. 4 days. She had 4 days to figure out what to do, how to navigate this impossible situation. 4 days before everything changed. She spent those days in a haze of conflicting emotions. She went through the motions, helped her mother with chores, organized her things for the trip, acted the part of the dutiful daughter. But every moment her mind was working, planning, trying to see a path forward through the maze of obstacles. She and Arcan found stolen moments, a few minutes in the barn, a brief conversation while carrying water, a touch of hands when passing tools. Each interaction was charged with desperation and longing, both of them aware that time was running out. On the third evening, she managed to slip away to where he was bedding down in the small bunk room attached to the barn. The space was sparse, a cot, a small stove, his few possessions neatly arranged. He looked up when she entered, surprise and concern warring on his face. "Agatha, you shouldn't. I don't care what I should or shouldn't do anymore." She closed the door behind her, leaning against it. "We need to talk, really talk about what we're going to do." He stood slowly. "What can we do? Your father's decided. You're leaving. I'm leaving. Maybe it's... Don't say it's for the best. Don't you dare. Then what do you want me to say?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration breaking through his usual calm. "That we should run away together? Live on the road, always moving, always looking over our shoulders? That's not a life, Agatha. It's more of a life than being apart. Is it?" He crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. "Think about what you'd be giving up. Your family, your home. Any chance at respectability or safety. And for what? For a man the world sees as savage, as less than human. You're not less than anything." Tears burned her eyes. "You're the only person who's ever seen me as whole, as real, as something more than what everyone expects me to be. And you've given me something I never thought I'd have. Someone who looks at me and sees a man, not a monster, or a curiosity or a threat." His thumb wiped away a tear that escaped down her cheek. "But wanting something and being able to have it are two different things. So that's it? We just give up?" "I didn't say that." He pulled her close and she buried her face against his chest, breathing in his scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "But we need to be smart about this. Recklessness will get us both killed or worse." "Then what?" she asked, voice muffled against his shirt. "What do we do?" "We wait. We're patient. You go to Santa Fe and I'll move on to another ranch, somewhere not too far. We'll write letters, carefully through people we can trust. And when enough time has passed, when your parents have relaxed their guard, we'll find a way to be together." It sounded reasonable. It sounded sensible. It sounded unbearable. "I don't want to wait months. I don't want to be apart." "I know." He held her tighter. "But if we rush this, if we run now, we'll have nothing. No resources, no allies, no plan. Your parents will send people after us. The authorities will get involved. And I..." His voice roughened. "I won't survive prison, Agatha. Or a noose. And I won't let anything happen to you." She pulled back to look at him. "You're scared." "Terrified," he admitted. "Not of dying. I've faced that enough times. But of failing you. Of being the reason you get hurt or worse." Agatha cupped his face in her hands. "Then we'll be scared together. But we'll be together." He kissed her then. Not the gentle kiss from the wagon, but something deeper, more desperate. A kiss that tasted like goodbye and promise and fear, all mixed together. His hands tangled in her hair and she pressed closer, trying to memorize every sensation, every detail, knowing it might have to last months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. 4 months, he whispered. "I'll wait 4 months. And then I'm coming for you, no matter what your parents say, no matter what obstacles stand in our way. Can you wait that long? I'd wait forever if I had to." She kissed him again, softer this time. "But I'd prefer 4 months." That night Agatha lay in bed and finalized her own plan. She would go to Santa Fe. She would play the role of the reformed daughter. She would let her aunt think she'd come to her senses. But she would also be planning, preparing, building toward the day when she could claim her own life. Because she had tasted freedom now. She had felt what it was like to be truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. And she would not, could not, give that up. Not for her parents' fear, not for society's expectations, not for anything. The next morning her father loaded her trunk onto the wagon. Her mother embraced her stiffly, whispering, "You'll thank us one day. When you're settled with a proper husband, you'll understand we were right." Agatha said nothing. As they pulled away from the ranch, she looked back and saw Arcan standing near the barn, watching. Their eyes met across the distance, and she saw the promise in his gaze, matching her own. 4 months, his look said. 4 months, hers answered. And then nothing, not distance, not family, not fear, not society itself, would keep them apart. The wagon rolled on toward Santa Fe, carrying Agatha toward a future her parents had chosen. But in her heart, she carried the seeds of the future she would choose for herself. And come spring, those seeds would bloom into something her family could never have imagined. A love stronger than fear, a commitment deeper than propriety, a determination that would reshape her entire world. The story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Santa Fe in winter was beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. Aunt Margaret's house was grand by territorial standards. 3 rooms plus a parlor, real glass in the windows, even a piano that had been shipped at considerable expense from St. Louis. Margaret herself was everything Catherine Lee aspired to be. Respectable, proper, connected to the right families, married to a territorial official. She was also relentlessly determined to fix her wayward niece. "You have lovely features, Agatha," she said during the first week, studying her across the tea service. "And you're still young enough to make a good match, but we must address this unfortunate business that brought you here." "I don't consider it unfortunate," Agatha replied, earning a sharp look. "That attitude will change. You'll see. Distance and proper society work wonders on disordered thinking." But distance only made Agatha's resolve stronger. She attended the social functions her aunt insisted upon, dances, teas, church socials, and played her role with an actress's skill. She smiled at eligible young men, made polite conversation with the territory's elite, acted every inch the reformed daughter, and she waited. Letters from home arrived weekly, her mother's flowing script filled with relief at her improved disposition and hope that she was coming to her senses. Her father wrote less often but with more warmth, telling her about the ranch, the cattle, the late winter storms. He never mentioned Arcan, neither did her mother. It was as if he had never existed, as if that entire episode had been a fever dream from which Agatha had finally awakened. But late at night, lying in the guest room of her aunt's house, Agatha would pull out the single letter she'd received through a complicated chain, from Arcan to a trader he trusted, from the trader to a Mexican woman in Socorro who did laundry for several families, from the laundress to a cousin in Santa Fe who delivered it hidden in a bundle of mended clothes. The letter was short, carefully worded in case it fell into wrong hands, but every word was precious. The winter seems longer without light, but spring always comes, and with it, renewal. I think of gardens that bloom despite the frost, of seeds that wait beneath cold earth for their moment. Patience is hard, but some things are worth waiting for. I remain, as always, watching the horizon for better days. No signature, no names. But Agatha knew every word was meant for her, and she carried the letter next to her heart like a talisman. The weeks crawled by. January became February. February became March. Agatha attended more social functions, deflected more matchmaking attempts, and perfected the art of seeming content while quietly dying inside. Then, in the 3rd week of March, everything changed. She was at a church social, enduring the attentions of a mining engineer from Denver, who seemed to think his wealth made up for his complete lack of charm, when she overheard 2 men talking near the punch bowl. "Trouble down in Socorro, Apaches raiding again." "I thought that was settled." "Never settled. They just bide their time. Heard the Hutchinson ranch was hit 2 nights ago. Burned the barn, ran off 30 head of cattle." Agatha's blood ran cold. The Hutchinsons were their nearest neighbors. If they'd been raided, the Lee ranch might be next, or might have already been hit. She excused herself from the engineer and found her aunt. "I need to go home." "Don't be absurd. You're not due back for 3 more weeks. My family could be in danger. You heard what those men said. Rumors and exaggeration. Besides, your father would send word if there was real trouble." Margaret patted her hand dismissively. You're simply looking for an excuse to return to that ranch and that situation we removed you from. But Agatha's mind was made up. That night, she packed her few belongings and left a note for her aunt. She took the small amount of money she'd managed to save, money her father had sent for necessities, and hired a seat on the mail coach heading south. The journey took 2 days of bone-jarring travel over rough roads. Agatha barely noticed. Her mind spun with terrible possibilities. Her parents hurt or worse. The ranch burned. Arcan, if he was still in the area, caught up in the violence. She should have felt vindicated by her family's fears coming true. Instead, she felt only terror and overwhelming need to get home, to know they were safe, to be there if they needed her. The coach let her off in Socorro, and she hired a wagon to take her the final 5 miles. The driver was reluctant. Dangerous times, miss. Traveling alone. But her money convinced him. As they approached the ranch, Agatha's heart nearly stopped. Smoke rose from somewhere beyond the main house, but as they got closer, she realized it was coming from a controlled burn pile, not a structure fire. And there was her father, supervising the burning of brush and debris. He looked up as the wagon approached, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and then concern. "Agatha, what are you doing here? Is everything all right?" She jumped down before the wagon had fully stopped, rushing to him. "I heard about the Hutchinson ranch. I was worried. The Hutchinsons are fine, shaken but fine, and we've had no trouble here." He gripped her shoulders, studying her face. "You came all this way because of a rumor?" "I had to make sure you were safe, that Mama was safe." Something in his expression softened. "Come inside. Your mother will be surprised." Surprised was an understatement. Catherine Lee nearly fainted when Agatha walked through the door. Then came the questions. Why had she left Santa Fe? What was Margaret thinking, letting her go? What did this mean for her recovery? "I'm not sick, Mama," Agatha said quietly, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. "I never was. I love you both. I needed to know you were safe." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Agatha, what are we going to do with you? Let me help with the ranch. Let me be useful. Let me prove I can be trusted." Her parents exchanged a long look. Finally, her father nodded. "All right, you can stay. But Agatha, the same rules apply. No contact with anyone inappropriate. No going off alone. No." "I understand, Papa." But that night, lying in her own bed for the first time in 3 months, Agatha knew the truth. She had come home, but not to resume her old life. She had come home to claim her new one. She just had to figure out how. The answer came 3 days later in the form of unexpected visitors. Agatha was hanging laundry when she heard horses approaching, several of them. She looked up to see 4 riders coming up the road, and her heart stuttered when she recognized one of them. Arcan sat tall on a bay horse, wearing clean clothes and a determined expression. Beside him rode 3 other men, one Apache, one Mexican, and one who looked to be a mix of several heritages. All carried themselves with quiet confidence. Thomas Lee emerged from the barn, hand instinctively moving to the rifle he kept nearby. But Arcan raised his hand in a gesture of peace. "Mr. Lee," he called out, stopping a respectful distance from the house. "I've come to speak with you. About your daughter." Catherine appeared in the doorway, face draining of color. "Thomas, send them away. Get the rifle." "Catherine, wait." Thomas studied the 4 men, noting their calm demeanor, the quality of their horses, the lack of weapons in their hands. "Let's hear what he has to say." Arcan dismounted, his companions staying on their horses. He approached Thomas, and Agatha noticed he'd braided his hair, wore a clean shirt and vest, presented himself with dignity that commanded respect. "Mr. Lee, I know this is unconventional, but I'm here to formally ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." The silence that followed was deafening. "You can't be serious," Catherine finally gasped. "I am completely serious, Mrs. Lee." Arcan's voice was steady, respectful. "I know I'm not what you would choose for Agatha. I know my heritage, my background make me unsuitable by most standards, but I love your daughter, and she loves me. And I'm here to do this the right way, with your permission and blessing." "The right way?" Thomas's voice was incredulous. "The right way would be to never have pursued her in the first place, to have known your place." "Papa." Agatha stepped forward, and all eyes turned to her. "Let him speak, please." Thomas looked at his daughter, and she saw the struggle in his face, between protecting her and respecting her agency, between his prejudices and his love. "5 minutes," he said gruffly. "Then you and your friends leave. And don't come back." Arcan nodded. "Thank you." He took a breath, and when he spoke, his words were clear and measured. "I won't pretend this would be easy. I know the challenges we'd face, the prejudice, the isolation, the hardship, but I'm prepared to face them. I've spent the last 3 months working for the Jimenez family." He gestured to the Mexican man on horseback, "proving I can provide. I've saved money. I have references from 3 ranchers who will testify to my character and work ethic." He reached into his vest and pulled out folded papers. "I've also secured a land claim, 160 acres near the mountains, under the Homestead Act. It's raw land, needs work, but it's mine legally. I can build a home there, raise cattle, make a life." Thomas took the papers, scanning them with obvious surprise. They were legitimate. Agatha could see it in his face. "I know you think I'm not good enough for your daughter," Arcan continued, "and by the standards of this territory, you're right. But I also know that Agatha is more than what you've let her be. She's strong, capable, intelligent. She deserves a life where she's valued for who she truly is, not just for being an obedient daughter." "How dare you?" Catherine started, but Thomas held up a hand. "What makes you think you can offer her anything better than what she has here?" "Freedom," Arcan said simply. "The freedom to make her own choices, to be her own person, to love without shame or hiding." He looked at Agatha then, and the emotion in his eyes made her chest ache. "I can't promise luxury or ease, but I can promise honesty, respect, and a partnership where her voice matters as much as mine." Agatha stepped forward, standing beside Arcan. Her mother made a sound of protest, but Agatha ignored it. "Papa, Mama, I know you're afraid for me. I know you think this is wrong, or dangerous, or doomed to fail. But I love him, and he loves me. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you, to let me choose this, to trust that I know my own heart." "You're too young to know your heart," her mother said, tears streaming down her face. "You're infatuated, caught up in the romance of something forbidden. I'm 22 years old, Mama, old enough to know what I want, old enough to accept the consequences of my choices." Agatha took her mother's hands. "You taught me to be strong, to be faithful, to stand by my convictions. I'm doing that now. Please don't punish me for learning your lessons too well." Thomas looked between his daughter, his wife, and the man who'd had the audacity to formally court his daughter, despite every social convention saying it was impossible. Agatha watched the war play out on his face, tradition against love, fear against hope, prejudice against respect. Finally he sighed heavily. "Catherine, we need to talk, inside." He looked at Arcan. "You wait here. Don't move. Don't speak to my daughter. Just wait." The next 20 minutes were the longest of Agatha's life. She and Arcan stood in tense silence, not touching, barely looking at each other, while raised voices floated from inside the house. His 3 friends sat quietly on their horses, patient and watchful. When her parents finally emerged, her mother's face was red and blotchy from crying, but something had shifted in her expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps a crack in her absolute certainty. Thomas walked slowly toward them, and Agatha held her breath. "I'm not giving my blessing," he said, and Agatha's heart sank. "I can't. Not yet. But—" he held up a hand as both she and Arcan started to speak. "I'm willing to consider it. Under conditions." "Anything," Arcan said immediately. "You'll work here at the ranch for 3 months, not as a hired hand, as a partner of sorts. You'll prove you can provide, that this isn't just passion, but practical commitment. You'll show respect for our family, our values, our concerns. And Agatha," he turned to his daughter, "you'll stay here, continue your work, and both of you will conduct yourselves with absolute propriety. No sneaking around, no stolen moments, nothing that would compromise your reputation further. Papa, let me finish. At the end of 3 months, if you both still feel the same way, if Arcan has proven himself, and if we can negotiate terms that ensure Agatha's safety and well-being, then we'll discuss this again. That's the best I can offer. It wasn't permission, but it wasn't refusal either. It was a chance. Agatha looked at Arcan and saw her own cautious hope reflected in his eyes. "We accept," they said in unison. Thomas nodded wearily. "Then I suppose you'd better unsaddle that horse. You're staying for supper." He looked at Arcan's companions. "Your friends are welcome too. It's the least we can offer after you've come all this way." The 3 months that followed were both easier and harder than Agatha had imagined. Arcan moved into the bunkhouse and threw himself into ranch work with an intensity that left everyone impressed. He was up before dawn, worked until after dark, never complained, never pushed boundaries, and slowly, painfully slowly, her parents' attitudes began to shift. Her father noticed first, commenting on Arcan's knowledge of animal husbandry, his fair dealings with merchants in town, his willingness to tackle the hardest jobs without being asked. "I'll say this," Thomas admitted one evening, "the man's a hard worker, and honest. Haven't caught him in a single lie or deception." Her mother took longer, watching from windows with suspicious eyes, flinching whenever Arcan came too close to Agatha. But Agatha noticed small changes. Catherine stopping to listen when Arcan explained something to Thomas, accepting vegetables Arcan had grown in the kitchen garden without comment, even, once, offering him coffee with a stiff nod instead of her usual cold silence. As for Agatha and Arcan, they learned the sweet torture of proximity without touch. They spoke in careful, proper language. They maintained respectful distance. They followed every rule her parents had set. But the looks they exchanged held entire conversations. The brief moments when their hands accidentally touched while passing tools felt electric. And Agatha discovered that anticipation could be its own kind of intimacy. Every delayed moment building towards something greater. Spring arrived in full bloom, transforming the desert into a carpet of wildflowers, and with it came the end of their agreed-upon waiting period. On a clear May morning, Thomas Lee asked Arcan to meet him in the barn. Agatha waited in the kitchen with her mother, both of them silent and tense. When the two men emerged an hour later, Thomas's expression was unreadable. He beckoned both women outside. "Catherine, Agatha, I've spoken with Arcan. We've discussed terms, expectations, and the future." He took a deep breath. "And I've decided to give my consent to their marriage." Agatha's mother let out a sob, of grief or acceptance or both. Agatha couldn't tell, but she didn't protest. "There will be conditions," Thomas continued. "You'll marry here at the ranch with our family present. You'll visit regularly, at least monthly. And Arcan, you'll send word if there's any trouble, any threat to Agatha's safety. If we hear you're not treating her well—" "You won't," Arcan said firmly. "I swear it." Thomas nodded. Then, surprising everyone, he extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, son. I can't say I ever imagined this, but I can see you love my daughter. And I can see she loves you. That has to count for something." Arcan shook his hand, emotion clear on his face. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Catherine approached slowly, her face still tear-stained. She looked at Arcan for a long moment, then at her daughter. "Promise me you'll be happy," she whispered to Agatha. "Promise me this is worth everything you're giving up." Agatha embraced her mother tightly. "I'm not giving anything up, Mama. I'm gaining everything I've ever wanted." The wedding took place 2 weeks later, in the small clearing near the ranch house where cottonwoods provided shade. It was a strange ceremony, part traditional Christian service, part Apache blessing from Arcan's grandfather, who traveled from the mountains to attend. The handful of guests included Agatha's parents, Arcan's 3 friends who'd ridden with him that day, the Jimenez family who'd vouched for him, and a few neighbors who were either genuinely supportive or too curious to stay away. Agatha wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit. Arcan wore a combination of traditional Apache and Western clothing, a white shirt and dark pants, but with intricate beadwork across his vest and a medicine bag at his waist. When they exchanged vows, Agatha looked into his eyes and saw her entire future reflected there. Not easy, but real. Not perfect, but true. Not what anyone expected, but completely, absolutely right. "I love you," she whispered, as they sealed their promises with a kiss. "I love you," he whispered back, and Agatha felt the weight of those words settle around her like armor against whatever challenges lay ahead. 3 years later, the small homestead in the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains was nothing like the Lee ranch where Agatha had grown up. The house was smaller, built mostly by Arcan's hands over their first year together. The land was rougher, the work harder, the isolation more complete, and Agatha had never been happier. She stood in the doorway of their home, watching Arcan work with the horses in the corral he'd built. Their small herd, started with 2 horses and careful breeding, had grown to 12, and Arcan's reputation as a horse trainer was spreading. People came from as far as Taos to buy his animals, and more importantly, they came with respect. Not everyone, of course. They still faced prejudice, still heard whispers, still dealt with the occasional confrontation from those who believed their union was wrong or unnatural, but they faced it together, and that made all the difference. "Mama, Mama, look!" Agatha turned to see her 2-year-old daughter, Eleanor, toddle toward her with a handful of wildflowers. The little girl had her mother's golden hair and her father's dark eyes, a beautiful combination that turned heads wherever they went. "They're beautiful, sweetling." Agatha scooped her daughter up, breathing in her sun-warmed scent. "Did you pick them all by yourself?" "Papa helped," Eleanor pointed toward Arcan, who had noticed them and was walking over, a smile softening his features. "Actually, she picked them herself. I just supervised." He reached them and wrapped his arms around both his girls. "How are my 2 favorite women?" "You're only 2 women," Agatha corrected, leaning into his embrace. "Lucky me." He kissed her temple, then Elena's forehead. "Your parents are coming this afternoon. Are we ready?" "Almost. I'm making your mother's stew recipe. Catherine's been asking for it." It had taken time, but Agatha's mother had slowly come to accept and even appreciate her daughter's choice. She doted on Elena, visited regularly, and had formed an unlikely friendship with Arcan's grandfather, both of them united in their love for their shared granddaughter. Thomas Lee had gone even further, occasionally asking Arcan's advice on horse training and cattle management, treating him as the son-in-law he'd never expected, but now valued. "How did we get here?" Agatha asked softly, watching Elena squirm down and run after a butterfly. "From that first winter to this?" Arcan pulled her closer. "Stubbornness, patience, and a willingness to fight for what we knew was right. I thought it would be harder," she admitted. "I thought the prejudice, the isolation, I thought it would break us. It tried." He turned her to face him. "And there are still hard days, still people who won't serve us in town, still comments and cold shoulders. But look what we've built despite that. Look at our daughter, our home, our life. They tried to tell us it was impossible. We proved them wrong." Agatha cupped his face in her hands. "No regrets?" "Only one, that I didn't find you sooner." He kissed her, deep and sweet. "Though I suppose the timing was always meant to be what it was. We were ready for each other when we met." That evening, as the sun set over the mountains and their families shared a meal together, Apache and white, traditional and modern, all blended into something new. Agatha looked around the table and felt a profound sense of peace. Her life hadn't turned out anything like she'd been told it should. She'd married outside her race and class, faced social ostracism, worked harder than any rancher's daughter was supposed to work. She'd given up certain comforts, certain safeties, certain assurances. But she'd gained so much more. She'd gained love without conditions, partnership without hierarchy, a life built on choice rather than obligation, and a daughter who would grow up knowing that love could transcend any boundary, that courage could overcome any obstacle, and that the most impossible things were often the most worth fighting for. As Arcan caught her eye across the table and smiled, that small, knowing smile that still made her heart flutter, Agatha remembered that winter day 3 years ago when she'd first watched him work in the snow, when she'd first felt the pull of something inevitable. She'd been terrified then, uncertain, caught between what she'd been taught and what she felt. Now, with the weight of experience and the evidence of their love surrounding her, she knew the truth. The most dangerous thing she could have done was ignore that pull, deny that feeling, choose safety over passion. Some loves don't ask permission. Some hearts recognize each other across every barrier erected to keep them apart. And when 2 souls decide to reach for each other, despite impossible odds, they don't just survive. They transform the world. The end. Dear listener, if you've lived long enough, you know that the deepest truths often hide in the quietest places, in a look exchanged across a crowded room, in a choice made when no one else is watching, in the courage to love when the world says you shouldn't. Agatha and Arcan's story isn't just about forbidden romance in the Old West. It's about something far more profound, the sacred right we all have to choose our own path, even when fear whispers that we're not strong enough, even when others insist they know what's best for us, even when the world conspires to keep us small and safe and silent. Perhaps you felt it too, that moment when your heart recognizes a truth your mind hasn't caught up to yet, that pull towards something or someone that doesn't fit the script you were handed. That quiet voice inside saying, "There's more, you deserve more, you are capable of more." At 60, 70, 80 years young, you've earned the wisdom to know this. The walls that confine us are often built by fear, our own or others. And love, in all its forms, is the gentle but unstoppable force that dissolves those walls brick by brick. You've made hard choices in your life. You've faced prejudice, overcome obstacles, loved despite the odds. You've been braver than you probably give yourself credit for. And if you're still here, still listening, still learning, still growing, that itself is an act of quiet revolution. Agatha's journey teaches us that transformation doesn't require youth. It requires willingness. Arcan shows us that dignity and worth aren't granted by society's approval. They exist within us, waiting to be claimed. And together, they prove that it's never too late to choose authenticity over comfort, connection over isolation, courage over fear. As you close your eyes tonight, may you rest in the knowledge that you, too, have built something beautiful with your life. Whether through the family you've raised, the love you've shared, the kindness you've extended, or simply the quiet persistence of showing up day after day, that is heroism, that is legacy. May your sleep be deep and peaceful, wrapped in the blanket of knowing you are enough exactly as you are. May your dreams be gentle, and may you wake tomorrow with renewed strength to face whatever comes. You are stronger than you know, more loved than you realize, and your story, like Agatha and Arcan's, matters more than you might believe. The desert teaches us that even in the harshest conditions, beauty blooms. You have bloomed, dear listener, and you will continue to bloom season after season, for as long as your heart beats and your spirit persists. Sleep well tonight. You are protected, you are valued, you are and always have been worthy of every good thing. With all our gratitude, the Wild West Whispers team. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this story. If Agatha and Arcan's journey moved your heart as much as it moved ours, we invite you, gently and sincerely, to subscribe to our channel, leave a kind comment, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in the power of love. Your support means the world to us. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for helping us bring more stories of courage, love, redemption, and emotional transformation to life. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another unforgettable love story from our channel. Click it and let yourself be surprised by another powerful journey. Thank you for being here, the Wild West Whispers team.